Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. As Poland prepares for the decisive second round of its presidential election on June the 1st, all eyes are on how voters who supported third-place candidate Sławomir Mencen will now cast their ballots, with right-wing forces rallying to block Civic Coalition's Rafał Trzaskowski and Law and Justice's Karol Nawrocki pushing hard. Tensions are high. In the meantime, during an interview with Polish public broadcaster, Prime Minister Donald Tusk tried to mobilize the slightly disillusioned Civic Coalition voter base to show up. Joining us to analyse this critical moment is a political scientist, Professor Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene from the University of Warsaw. Professor, thank you very much for taking the time and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning and thank you for having me here.
A pleasure as always. So I'd like to get your view first, if I may, on Prime Minister Tusk's comments. He said he wasn't calm. So clearly there's a little bit of tension, a little bit of stress around this whole second round. How do you read it?
Well, I read it as a full mobilization from any possible side, of course, of all those voters who might vote for Rafał Trzaskowski. However, I would not say that involvement of Donald Tusk is the best possible way of dealing with preparations for the second round. I would rather say that the less of Donald Tusk, the better. And the reason why I'm saying this is that many voters voted actually against this government and against the fact that this government hasn't fulfilled all its promises, or not even a part which the voters might consider significant. And therefore, Rafał Trzaskowski was punished for it. So now the question is why Donald Tusk is trying to actually get involved into a campaign in which he knows he was partly punished and Rafał Trzaskowski now bears its consequences. Obviously, I understand that now every vote counts, and that's the fact. However, I would rather say that Rafał Trzaskowski should opt for stating that he will press the government, he will push the government to conduct things which the government hasn't conducted through the parliament yet, because there are many things which haven't been dealt with in the parliament, mainly due to PSL, so the Polish Peasants' Party, but Donald Tusk didn't do much to push it forward in a way in which the Poles might expect, in particular the more progressive ones. Therefore, I think that rather Rafał Trzaskowski should say, okay, thank you very much. It's very important that Donald Tusk understands the situation. However, I would like to say that my role will be also to push the government, to sometimes oppose the government, because I think that a majority of those voters who still have potential to vote for Rafał Trzaskowski but were considering staying at home might get convinced by the fact that he will not just be a vice Donald Tusk, but he will actually be a president which will somewhat push and, let's say, speed up the government and catalyze certain processes that the voters expect.
So he would be part of the checks and balances, irrespective of the fact that they come from the same political coalition or the main party. Now, is there common ground between these two presidential candidates where, you know, the government's agenda can be pushed through without too many difficulties?
Well, Karol Nawrocki will definitely not cooperate with this government. You can be more than sure about that in any aspect, because now when you take a look at what Mencen requires from Trzaskowski and Nawrocki in order to support one of them, or I don't know, both or whatever, because now the situation is pretty tricky. He actually wants signing a document with 8 postulates, where we have postulates like actually anti-Ukrainianism, anti-Europeanism, where we have anti-hate speech. So, let's say it's not anti-hate speech, but actually anti-measures, so measures against protecting from hate speech. This is what I should actually have said. So what we have, it's a sort of a set of points which basically have nothing to do with democracy. And now Karol Nawrocki said, I would sign it, no problem, because he would do obviously anything he can to get the presidentship, while Rafał Trzaskowski is absolutely unable to sign it, because that would mean basically pointing himself against the European Union, against Ukraine, against so many things which are actually values of democracy, of liberal democracy, of the European Union. So here we come. We have Karol Nawrocki, Sławomir Mencen, who basically share a totally different set of values. And of course, Rafał Trzaskowski cannot go this way. So I would say that Donald Tusk would not have a very good cooperation, not even whatever cooperation, with Karol Nawrocki, who shares values which are totally against what this government represents and what the Poles basically wanted in October 2023, and they actually still want now, because the fact that Mencen, Nawrocki and Braun, that they got so much of a support does not necessarily mean that the Poles don't want democracy, or that they, opt for fascism, anti-Ukrainism and anti-Europeanism. We know from other research results that it's not true. They, to some extent, just wanted to send a signal that they do want to be listened to and taken into consideration. And this is what this government should do, and the president can support it. And therefore, I think that Rafał Trzaskowski should basically promise, or should make it clear that he will press the government in those areas where the government should more conduct activities which the citizens actually really expect to be conducted soon and efficiently.
But how easy would that be for Rafał Trzaskowski to do, to convince Prime Minister Tusk to shift some of his positions? I mean, he is, after all, in a coalition. It's not only his decision.
Exactly. That's a very good question, which I hear so rarely. He has a potential to do that for a very important reason. In these presidential elections, we see rather weak results of Szymon Hołownia, of Magdalena Biejat, quite a good result of Adrian Zandberg, who is not in the governing coalition. So what we could see as a result of these elections is actually making it quite clear that both Szymon Hołownia as well as Magdalena Biejat do not matter that much, and they cannot be those powers in the coalition that can dictate any solutions, or that can really stubbornly oppose against certain solutions. So I think that from that point of view, we can say that Szymon Hołownia should try to convince PSL, so the Polish Peasants' Party, which is in the internal coalition with Szymon Hołownia, as one party now in the parliament, one fraction. And Magdalena Biejat, who also opposes Donald Tusk in other aspects, like, for example, the health contributions, then, of course, we may say that they lost, to some extent, this legitimacy to dictate Donald Tusk how to govern, what to do, and to oppose in important decisions. And I think that here Rafał Trzaskowski would have quite a good situation. He could say, look, we have to take through the parliament those most important and most expected by the Poles solutions and reforms. And you guys didn't have a sufficient support to now state that you represent a vast let's say, part of the society, a large group of the society. So please rather cooperate, knowing what's at stake, than dictate your very own conditions.
So there may
and
be...
I think this could work.
There may be some levers yet to pull. Now, in the last couple of minutes that we have left, Professor, I want you to look in your crystal ball and lay out for us two scenarios. The first, if Trzaskowski wins, how do you see the political landscape in, let's say, a year, 2 years from now? And the same if Nawrocki wins.
Look, what I would wish for, I can tell you, is that Rafał Trzaskowski wins. Of course, there will be a very tight difference. There is no doubt about that. But if Trzaskowski wins, I think that in the very few months of his first months of his term, he would press for all the necessary, in particular, human rights related reforms like abortion, like LGBTQ plus rights, basically whatever is expected on this more progressive side, because the sooner he basically tries to push the government to do it, the better. And then the government would easily have 2 years to prepare for the parliamentary elections. But I think that within those 2 years, there could be really many positive results of economic development and those reforms actually visible. While if Karol Nawrocki wins, of course, he will push this, let's say, hard agenda of putting obstacles to this government, and the government will not really be able to govern. So I would expect either sooner parliamentary elections or 2 years of a total chaos, and basically efforts on both sides to overtake, let's say, the dominance on the political scene. But in those conditions around us, like, still the war, Trump allying with Putin, I don't see much of a good, let's say, perspective for this kind of course of action. Therefore, I think that if Rafał Trzaskowski wins, this situation has a way better chance to provide for certain peace and also for better security for Poland. But, it will be very tight. And I think that even if Rafał Trzaskowski wins, it will be, 100,000 votes, not more.
Right. So a tight race coming up, stagnation versus moving forward. Now, luckily we have a few more seconds. I still have you for a few more seconds. So very, very quickly, do you think, because Menton has invited both of the presidential candidates for a YouTube interview, of course, Nawrocki has accepted, and so far, I believe Trzaskowski has also just accepted. Looking forward to that, what do you expect to turn up in that conversation?
You see, I hope at least that Rafał Trzaskowski will not agree to sign anything. He will probably, at the end of the day, just state, okay, I agree with some of your postulates, but not with all of them. Therefore, I will not be able to sign it. Research results show quite clearly that now, for Rafał Trzaskowski, flirting with Menton and with far right would be destructive for potential voters on the left side. Therefore, he shouldn't go this way. He rather should opt for a mobilization of those who didn't go and vote, like people around Gdańsk, so in this western part of Poland, where he still has some potential of mobilization, and he should really opt for rather convincing those left-oriented, so Zandberg's voters and voters of Biejat, Hołownia, and those who didn't go to vote, but they used to vote for Hołownia, PSL, for the left in the elections 2023. And this is what he should do. Right. He should rather show that there are no conditions related to the European Union and Ukraine that he could fulfill, which Sławomir Menton actually is opting for, because they are unacceptable.
So get his own voter base more engaged. Thank you very much, as always, Professor. Pleasure to see you again. Thank you for
so
laying out your analysis.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And that's all from us here on World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.